Here's just a top-level summary of a little bit of warning about what you're going to hear today. It's a collection of tips that are based on interviews, my experiences, and my clients' experiences, either my consulting clients or coaching clients. But your mileage is definitely going to vary. Some ideas won't apply to your organization or to your team or to you, and you need to think carefully about what you do before you do it. Slide 9, please, Michael. A high-level summary of what we're going to do. What we'll learn about is what politics is and what it isn't. It's not a four-letter word, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We tend to confuse confidence and competence, and I want to try and draw some distinctions between the two and look at how our basic psychology affects how we get confused about those. Most of us had very little training in politics. I certainly didn't when I went through school, and as far as I know, there aren't very many courses, at least through the engineering curriculum, in organizational politics. My hope is that that will change someday, but until then we have to rely on what we learn by experience or what we can read about. Most of us, when it comes to politics, are consciously incompetent, and what I mean by that is we're not very good at it, most of us, and we're aware that we're not very good at it, and that sort of keeps us out of trouble. But we'll talk about the competence model and spend a little bit of time on that. For short-term improvement in political performance, the best approach, I believe, is to focus on specific situations. So the ones we're going to look at with respect to meetings are things before the meeting, the agenda, meeting structure, seating arrangements, and so on. Things that happen during the meeting, which are normally classed under a kind of a catch-all word, communication, but there's much more to it than that. And then there's the meeting process. We'll say a little bit about power in meetings, organizational power in meetings. But, of course, in the short time we have today, it's a little difficult to get too much into that. The main thing to remember is that political skill depends on using whatever assets you have, the right asset, at the right time for the right reason. And a lot of people have difficulty figuring that one out. I certainly did and still do it from time to time. Michael, slide 10, please. Here's a definition of workplace politics, and I'll just read this and let it sink in. Workplace politics is what happens when we contend with each other for control or dominance, or when we work to resolve specific issues. Now, most people think of politics as a dirty, negative thing, but politics, it can be either toxic or healthy, creative, destructive. It comes in both polarities, and there's really a spectrum of healthiness, I guess you would call it, or positivity, negativity. Political moves can be helpful. They can be hurtful. There are both times. I like to think of workplace politics as all of that. And obviously you want to stick to the, stay away from the dark side, to use Star Wars terminology, but people do spend a lot of time there. There's more to it than the dark side. Political actors, that is people who are engaged in political action at work, are for the most part trying to transform whatever the current configuration is to some new configuration that they think will be better. Whatever you think someone else is doing, most of the time they're really trying to improve things. You may not believe that, but they believe that. Now, there are people who aren't trying to improve things. There are people who are actively trying to make things worse. They're rare. Most of the time when we think someone is malicious or malevolent, that's just in our minds. That's my experience anyway. Political actors do try to accomplish their goal, that transformation using their political assets. And that can be anything from their authority and their position to resources they control or information that they have that you don't. And they exploit behavior of other people in the organization too. That can be an asset as well. So the main point of this slide is that politics comes in both polarities, that most people are trying to, when they engage in politics, they're trying to improve the situation, and they do that using whatever assets are available. Slide 11, please, Michael. How's the volume? Any complaints coming in, Michael?
It's excellent from my end.
All right. If anybody can't hear me, let Michael know, and he'll tell me. So why is political activity, why do we associate it with so much trouble? Why do we think of it as negative? And here are some reasons. They aren't really excuses, but there are mechanisms that you can find if you observe organizations, you see these in action. I'll just go through some of them. Information is unevenly distributed. That is, some people know some things and other people don't know them. And that can be by intention. That is, there can be things that are known to some and those people who know them will not reveal it. And that can create tension. It can create misunderstandings and difficulty. It can also prevent difficulty. So there can be good reasons to withhold information. Most of the time it's probably not a good idea, but it can be helpful. People see things differently. And one of the reasons for that is people observe situations based on what they know. And since they know different things and they have had different life experiences, they naturally, when they look at a given situation, different people can see different things. One consequence is that sometimes what we think we see isn't what actually happened. So our perceptions can be mistaken. And if you act on the assumption that everything that you've observed correctly, you will eventually get into trouble because observation apparatus has errors in it. Organizational goals and personal goals do differ. What I want for myself, it may be in conflict with what the organization wants for itself. And it's certainly going to be in conflict with what other people want for themselves. So this difference in goals creates a tension that can be creative, it can be helpful, and it can also create difficulty. People who mean well and who are acting so as to improve things sometimes make mistakes. They do it wrong. They choose the wrong phrasing and accidentally hurt someone's feelings. There can be all kinds of errors floating around, and that is an unending source of pain. Sometimes people do put their personal goals first, even when they conflict with the organizational goals, and sometimes they have to. They really, to ask anything other than that in some situations is asking an awful lot. So there can be times when people will behave in direct conflict with what you think the organization expects them to do, and strangely, if you knew everything that they know, you might do the same thing. So when they do that, best to suspend judgment unless you know the full reasons behind it. Overall, our political competence is low, so we have a lot of bumbling around that goes on, and that's one of the things I'm trying to assist with here by raising the level of political competence.